let's start from the beginning.
Yes.
Courtney, also known as the Finance Brides. Talk to us about how you got into creating content about weddings when you actually were a New York finance girly.
Yes. So I started back in the summer of 2023. So 2022 actually. Wow, I'm like getting my years. It's almost been 3 years. And I started because, as most girls do when they're in a long-term relationship, you kind of get that itch for like weddings. You want to start looking at rings. And so naturally I started scrolling on TikTok and Instagram of all things weddings. I found myself on wedding TikTok while I was working full-time in finance in New York City. When I was scrolling, I feel like I saw a lot of brides sharing their story and their planning experience and them as a bride, whether that's DIYs or just what they're doing, ins and outs. And then I also saw planners and photographers sharing more of like, this is kind of how I do things. This is what I look for in weddings. This is what I like. But there wasn't really this in-between of ideas and tips that are more broad in general, where people can kind of take what they will. If that, like, everything that I was seeing was more biased towards a side, as opposed to just sharing the information. And then if you choose to like it or use it, that's great. But if not, it doesn't affect me at all. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, I was not a bride. And I feel like I noticed that gap. And when I started making content, also across all budgets, because that's kind of where the finance of the Finance Brides came in. Of course, I have, professional experience working in finance, but weddings are obviously very expensive. And I feel like a lot of the times social media paints this beautiful Pinterest board without managing those expectations. So I really wanted to come in, manage expectations, but then be like a non-judgmental space for people to get wedding ideas.
When it comes to budgets and talking about finances with weddings, how much things cost, what you should spend, it is always a trigger online. People go so wild. They get angry if your budget is too small. That's not realistic. If it's too big, it's not relatable. So it's such a nerve that, at Loverly, that we try to be delicate with, because much like what you said, like we kind of service like the broad spectrum of couples, right? Like whether you're having a $10,000 elopement with, 20 people, or you're doing the full over the top, multiple 100,000 wedding, like you can kind of come to us for inspiration, etc. But it's hard to kind of create content that basically makes everyone happy. Yes. And so whenever we do budget content, like the comments are always aggressive. Yes. I also think that people are going to have a problem with everything, no matter what you do. And I feel like when you're putting things on the internet, you're opening up the conversation. But I think regardless, it's an important conversation to have. And I think people should talk about it. Well, the more you talk about it, the more that people understand, are educated, and then they can make their own decision of how they want to spend. Exactly. And I will say it totally depends on where you're getting married, right? I feel like the Northeast, New Jersey, New York, tri-state area side of things, or California is very different than the Midwest, or compared to a destination wedding. But then when you talk destination weddings, Lake Como is very different than Mexico. And so I just feel like, I think the entry point for Lake Como is like $300,000. Oh, I'm sure it's probably more. Yeah. I think that's just for the venue. Yeah. That's what I'm saying, the entry point. I believe it. And people see these beautiful weddings online. And they have no idea that's $1 million. They have no idea. And I feel like where it's actually the most interesting, and where I find the budget conversation goes south when talking about how much things cost, are actually vendors, because I feel like vendors then show up with something to prove and why they're charging this much and why. And I think there's vendors at every price point. Exactly. And so I think you can get we've had, Josh from Birch, which is like the most gorgeous over the top design. Yes. And there's a price point for that. But then 100%. You also have florists who, are earlier in their career that are down to experiment and try things, and you can also scale back your flowers too, right? Exactly. But actually, flowers is a really interesting point for you specifically. Yes. Because we were talking before, that's not somewhere where you're really spending a lot of your budget. I'm not a flower girly. So I'm getting married in July. In
In New Jersey, of course, at the Florentine Gardens, the estate at Florentine Gardens. It is the most gorgeous, dreamy venue, and I'm so excited. But it is so beautiful that I just didn't feel the need to overdo it with flowers. And so I'm actually renting my flowers from Something Borrowed Blooms, which I am so excited about.
We work with them quite a bit, and their stuff is amazing.
Gorgeous.
You were on our Bermuda trip, the I Do Crew trip.
And it was amazing.
Thank you. And we had their florals at all of our events, and they're so gorgeous. And the best part is so easy to set up and break down.
And they photograph well.
They photograph really well.
Which I think is like the most underrated part too, because a lot of times people feel like, oh, they're gonna look fake, they're gonna look a certain way, but
these are really high-end silk flowers.
100%.
I had them for my engagement party, and you know, I always think if you're gonna do silk flowers, they're gonna have to be like further away, not close up. And being in the wedding industry for 10 15 years, plus my sister who's a wedding publicist, and she reps like a bunch of like big people. A lot of her friends came to my engagement party, one of who was like a big florist and the other who's like a big planner. And I called her on FaceTime before, and I was like, look at the flowers. Like, do you think like I should go buy real flowers and put them in between? And I asked our planner, and she looked at them. She's like, Kelly, they're so beautiful.
So beautiful.
Like, you don't need to do anything. And they were up close. They were runners on the table, but it was so much volume, and it was also at night that
and the price is right.
Oh yeah, and the price is right. You don't even have to think about it. You're like, 100%. Duh.
Do you think guests like flowers, whether that's silk or real, guests have an opinion on?
I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes they can't even tell.
Right.
I mean, some of them you can tell when you smell, but there is also like a scent to them. They smell really good.
But I also think like as a guest, like how focused are you on the flowers? You know what I mean? Like that's not the center of attention. You're focused on the couple. You're focused on dancing, eating, and drinking. The experience,
I think, is usually where the guest puts their attention, right? Where it's like, what is their experience when they walk in? Whether it's, the music, the food, the drinks, the vibe, right? And you can create a vibe a bunch of different ways, even without florals. You can do lighting, you can do decor, right? Drapery, which I know was a really big trend, still kind of
coming back a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of still there, but I think it's just changing the way we're seeing it.
Totally. And I think ultimately there's very few weddings where people are going to walk away from and be like, wow, the flowers were amazing. And even at the very basic price point at flowers, you're still spending,
it's really expensive,
thousands
because
of dollars.
Every single flower is handpicked, hand touched,
and the labor is insane, rightfully so. But flowers are definitely one of the things where, for me, I just couldn't. I've seen at the end of the night from a wedding, seeing all of those flowers go to waste, or people are loading them in my trunk or in people's trunks. Or I think if you do choose to go the regular flower route, you should definitely look into donating them at the end of the night, so that way they at least get a better home, because you're probably not going to need that many centerpieces in your apartment or home.
Yeah, and they'll last for like 4 days. Whenever we have events for Loverly where we use live flowers, I bring them all home, and my house is beautiful and filled for like 4 days, and then when it starts to die, I get like sad.
Yeah.
Oh no.
No, it's true, and that's why I just wasn't. It wasn't a splurge worthy
moment for you.
Moment for me. Yeah, not at all.
It's interesting because we had those dinners with, I think it was like 8 brides who are planning this year. So the Loverly I Do Crew, which you're one of our girlies, where we asked the question, like, where are you splurging and where are you saving on your wedding? So you said saving. One of them was floral. And I was surprised to see there were, I think, like 2 or 3 other brides that were also like on board. Like they can't get on board with spending so much on flowers, which I was kind of surprised by. I mean, I get it. I feel the same way. If you're doing a large scale wedding where you need a lot of floral, it can get really expensive really fast.
Totally.
But also another thing that you said, which also a lot of the girls agreed with, was you're not splurging on makeup.
Yes. That is a hot take. I think that is a very hot take. I am actually doing my own makeup for my wedding day. I think I will say I can count on a handful of times, less than a handful of times, where I've actually walked away from getting my makeup done where I was like, oh, I don't want to fix this, I don't want to change that, or I actually liked how I looked and didn't change anything. And so when I started getting makeup quotes, that blew my mind. I will say, like, that was one thing.
What were they starting at?
I got I got hair and makeup quotes for $1,500 for an hour and a half.
For just you?
For just the bride, yes. I will say majority of them were around the $700 to $900 range. Granted, again, New Jersey wedding, New York, New Jersey prices, but yeah.
But just for you.
Just for bride's makeup. And in the grand scheme of a wedding, some may say that's not a lot, but for me, that is a lot of money to be not sure. And I knew for my wedding day, I wanted to be in control, and doing my own makeup is really comforting to me. I enjoy it. I like it. It brings me peace. And I just like pictured me with my mom getting ready in the morning of our weddings, like doing my makeup and having it be very low key, as opposed to me staring at myself getting my makeup done and hoping it turns out good, you know?
And are you having a wedding party?
I'm not having a wedding party. So no bridesmaids, no groomsmen. However, we are doing something a little untraditional with our, I guess, bridal party. But my brother-in-law will be Steven's best man. And then my brother will actually be my man of honor on my side. And then I'm also having a maid of honor as well. My maid of honor is definitely going to be more of the holding the bouquet, making sure my train looks good, because my brother... That's not a man's responsibility. And then we'll just have our two brothers up there during our ceremony and giving speeches. And I think it'll be the most magical, because nobody loves you more than your family.
I've seen that more and more, especially for me as I've gotten older, and my friends who are getting married a little bit older, they've kind of, the size of the wedding party has shrunk down, but definitely has become more and more popular to either not have a wedding party at all or to have like one or two. Was that like a difficult conversation for some of your friends, or how did you broach it?
You know, it wasn't. I will say I have a few friends, but they're amazing friends. Steven, on the other hand, is like the mayor. So he has about 45 best friends who, like, they are truly such good friends. And I think it was just the conversation of it's not realistic to have everyone. And we didn't want to make the conversation of, choosing one person over another and having to worry about that. And so it was so much easier to just be like, you know what? We love everyone. They know they're important to us, and we're just going to have, our family. But then at the same time, for my girlfriends, I knew I wanted to do something a little sweet to just show that I, am so thankful for their support. And so we're doing something blue. So last summer, when I was, instead of a bridesmaid proposal, which was super popular, I asked my girlfriends to be my something blue, and I wrote a cute little poem, and I had everyone over at my apartment and hosted a little brunch. And so they'll be coming a few hours before the ceremony starts, dressed in blue, and we'll take pictures beforehand. And
actually, like, their attire for the wedding is like a blue palette.
Yeah, whatever they want. I mean, we are having a black tie wedding, so it will be like floor-length gowns, but it was more of like, if you want to. There's no pressure. Whatever color, blue, navy, light blue, bright blue, like it really doesn't matter to me. As long as they're comfortable and confident, like that's the most important thing. And I feel like blue is a really flattering color. Like, there's so much you can do with it. But at the same time, there's no pressure. Like, if you want to wear a pink dress or an orange dress, go for it.
Out of all the couples I've spoken to and brides that are either planning or have just completed their wedding, I always find that there is two people in the relationship. There's the one that has like 3 friends, and there's the one that has 300.
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny because you are so social and bubbly, but I'm like surprised that, I mean, maybe it's like your close friends are smaller, but it happens all the time.
I like to keep a tight knit. I think part of also the wedding experience that I tell brides all the time is you really see who shows up for you when you're getting married and starting a family, and going through big life moments. You really start to see who is there for you and who shows up for you. And at the end of the day, quality is way more important than quantity, in my opinion.
Speaking of quantity, how big are you going for a guest count?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I want to say probably too big, but the real answer is I have no idea. I will say
What do you mean you have no idea? Like, isn't the guest count the first thing you set when you're setting your budget?
So you would
Miss Finance Brides.
You would think, but one thing I always say is for the brides that are doing a lot of the planning and the grooms tend to maybe be a little behind the scenes, one thing my fiance really cared about was making sure everyone can be invited and nobody's excluded and everyone gets a +1. And if we're inviting a family, we're inviting the kids, we're inviting everyone.
What does that mean? Is that like 500, 1,000 people?
No,
What's going on here?
I think we're going to be around 300. I'm hoping for 250. Now, when I say I don't know is because I don't know how many people we actually invited. I have a range. I think it's...
Did you send out invitations?
Yes, but where it's difficult is the families because that can mean
you
5
invited
people.
An entire household and you don't know... Have you gotten your RSVPs yet? When's the RSVP date?
I think like mid-June or beginning of June. It's coming up. We're definitely going to have to do some outreaching. But yeah, we
and your venue can handle this range of people? Like what's going to happen?
It has a max capacity of 300. So we actually can't go over 300. But I have a feeling if we need to, I might have to just call them up and be like, please, and they might do me a solid. People might be eating outside, but no, I think another part is that my fiance is Albanian, and so we're having an Albanian American wedding, and a lot of our family from Albania will be coming to the wedding, and so because there's visas and there's travel at stake, we don't really know until people have booked their flights and are coming. So I think that's the part of the letting that side go and letting the control of figuring out guest count, because I feel like guest count is definitely something that could be the most stressful, but
it's also the most variable when it comes to the expense. So like the difference between 50 people,
it makes a big difference.
It's going to be a big incremental cost.
Yes. But that's not one that I'm worrying about at this time. I'm picking and choosing my battles. Yeah. I think, we're so blessed that people want to celebrate us, and we're also blessed that we're in a position to have that flexibility. I know a lot of couples don't, but that was one splurge that we were like, this is worth it for us to spend a little bit more so people can come to the wedding rather than having to make people feel left out.
What are other areas that you're splurging on?
So I think my biggest one is my venue, which obviously is that per person cost that we're talking about. But I am obsessed with my wedding venue. I
can tell you like literally glow when you talk about it. I feel like you love it more than Steven.
No, maybe not. But I really love it. Florentine Gardens it's one of those, if you know, you knows. It's one of the most popular wedding venues in New Jersey, and for a reason. The hospitality is unmatched. They make you feel like family. And I will say it's family owned. So that makes a big difference when you can go in and you don't feel like you're just like another person taking a tour. They really take the time with you as a couple. I literally went back with my parents, both sides of the parents, so 2 different times, plus Steven. Then I went back with my grandparents. Like, I've toured this venue so many times, and every single time I walk away feeling not rushed. All my questions are answered, taken care of, and I really feel like they show up for their couples. And also, the food is unmatched. Literally anyone who, like I said, if you know, anyone who's gone to a wedding at Florentine Gardens.
Have you been to a wedding there before?
I haven't. But anyone that I've talked to says.
So how did you find the venue?
So it's actually a funny story. In 2023, actually July of 2023, I was asked to be a pretend bride, a model bride for a wedding magazine. And the venue was actually Florentine Gardens. Oh. And so in July of 2023, I was a pretend bride and did a bridal photo shoot and was on cover of a magazine as a bride, wearing an engagement ring and everything, and then fell in love with the venue. And then 2 weeks later, before we were even engaged, I was like, Steven, we have to see this place. Like, you're gonna love it. And like I said, we were not even engaged at this point. And when we went, he was like, done. Like, this was like, I don't even want to look at another venue. This is the best thing. I love the people.
So before you were even engaged?
Like 6 months before we were even engaged, we booked our wedding venue.
Okay, hold on.
I know.
So let's back up then.
Yes.
When did you actually get engaged?
I got engaged.
You knew it was happening. Clearly, you had already booked a wedding date for 2 years later.
Yep.
Okay.
Literally 2 years
later.
Totally
normal. Totally casual.
Totally normal. I will say it was the smartest thing we possibly could have done.
I mean, venues do book.
Yes.
Like 18 months now in advance.
Exactly. And so we got engaged March 2024 and our wedding is July 2025. So about, 15 months of an engagement. But when we booked our wedding venue, which like I said was August of 2023, there was like 3 dates available. 3 Fridays left. Sorry, let me correct myself. There was 3 Fridays left of the entire 2025 calendar year, a year and a half in advance. And the reason for that is because on Saturdays and Sundays, there's 2 weddings a day at the venue. But on Fridays and Thursdays, there's 1 wedding. And so we already knew we wanted to have a Friday wedding. And as far as booking ahead of time, Steven was a little hesitant at first, but by the time we went to go put our second deposit down, which was December, there was like no dates left and all the Fridays were taken and it was insane. Like they were like, this was so
Still
smart.
not engaged.
Still not engaged. Now people might ask, oh, you ruined the surprise of the engagement. By the time I'm married, me and Steven will have been together for 7 years. So I feel like when you're in a long-term relationship like that, you know you're going to get married. There's no surprises. And I think a lot of times people, especially on social media, work it up to be like this magical thing. I want to be so surprised. I want it to be this, insane surprise proposal. But for me and Steven, we were like, hey, like, let's go engagement ring shopping. And this is going to be one of the biggest purchases like you make. Like, let's go together and make sure we love it. And then, the proposal was still very much so a surprise, even though I knew it was coming eventually.
You were together, 5 years before you got engaged?
Yeah.
And you picked out the ring then?
So we went shopping together at Roman Jewelers. It's like a local jeweler in Bridgewater, New Jersey. I absolutely love it there. It's actually, we just picked out our wedding bands. We picked them up 2 days ago, actually. But we went. It was actually the same jeweler that I met through that bridal photo shoot that I did that July. And like I said, I loved it. I had such an amazing experience. And I picked out a bunch of different rings. I saw what looked good. And then ultimately, once we left, Steven came back and decided which exact ring that he was going to go with. So it was kind of like I gave multiple options and I leaned towards a favorite. And then I let him come back and actually do the picking. So it still was special.
How did he do?
He did amazing. I mean, a gorgeous like oval solitaire setting, platinum. I really wanted something minimal but with a statement, and I feel like solitaire was the right move, and he did great.
So tell us about the proposal.
The proposal was so special. I feel like I said, when you're in a long-term relationship, even though you know it's coming, it feels so surreal when it's happening. So backstory about me and Steven, we went to school at Fordham University in the Bronx, and we were actually COVID grads. So we graduated in 2020, and we never got graduation pictures, which breaks my heart because now thinking about telling our kids we went to college together and we're college sweethearts, we had nothing to prove for it. We didn't have our graduation photos. And so every single time the months went on, 2021, 2022, we never went back for graduation pictures. And so I was just always so sad about that. Fast forward to last March, we were visiting Steven's grandparents who also live in the Bronx. And it was a Sunday. It was Palm Sunday. And we were going to his grandparents for lunch. And he said, let's actually stop by Fordham's church. It's a beautiful day. It was a beautiful, even though it was mid-March or end of March, it was, I want to say 70 degrees and sunny. And he's like, let's stop by the church at Fordham and get a couple palms, because it's Palm Sunday. And my brother-in-law was coming with us because we were going to his grandparents. And so we went, as we were walking through the gates of the school, it was empty. There was no kids there. And I was like, oh, that's weird. It must be spring break. There's no kids on campus. It was completely empty. Birds were chirping. And we went into the church and we sat down because there was a couple in the back. And as soon as we sat down, I guess that couple left. Then Steven took me to the front of the church and he said a little prayer and proposed at Fordham's church, while my brother-in-law took iPhone pictures. And it was exactly what I wanted. I really wanted it to be private and intimate and special. And then after that, we FaceTimed our parents and he said, by the way, there's no lunch and we're going to spend the rest of the afternoon taking pictures on Fordham's campus. So we're going to have our graduation pictures, but proposal pictures.
Amazing.
So
he had a photographer, or your brother-in-law did it?
My brother-in-law did it.
Oh, amazing.
We brought the camera, or he brought the camera.
So sweet.
Yeah.
So that was in March, and then now we're a little over a year later.
Now we're
and you're like 90 days out from the wedding.
Yes, we're less than 3 months away, which is insane. Time really flies.
And what do you have left?
I think at this stage, it's
besides designing your floor plan, because you have no idea how many guests you have.
Right.
Which is, right. I'm like still shocked by that.
Well, my mom is like, you're a little too relaxed. Like, can you be a little bit more stressed so we can get things done? And I was like, don't mess up the flow. I gotta stay calm. But I think now we have a lot of the small details. So we have like the seating chart, the menu. We're going to our tasting next week. So we're picking out our food with our my parents and my in-laws. And then, picking out the wedding cake and all of the small details that I think are impactful because they tie together. Mm-hmm. And then just honestly, timeline. I'm working with Mostest for my wedding day coordination, and we actually started like a 90-day coordination. So I'll be working with them leading into it of just making sure the day goes smoothly.
So glad you have someone there, because
yes.
When I hear people DIY, which I'm all for, I'm like A-type. I plan so many events with
I'm not a DIY, don't worry.
Yeah, I was gonna say we need some support, especially on day of. Especially if you're doing your own makeup, like you need to not be worried about like, did the cake get delivered? Is it sitting in the sun?
100%.
Is it in a refrigerated place? Right?
I couldn't agree more. Yes, so I'm not DIY for like the small details. I'm DIY for like my makeup, and I actually don't have a wedding planner, which is what we always talk about. Which to a lot of people, they're like, "How are you planning this big wedding without a wedding planner?" And I think.
But you'll have a coordinator.
But I'll have the coordinator.
Yes.
And I think that's the most important thing, is just making sure no matter what, all the preparation you do beforehand, that you're able to be fully present on your wedding day. And that's why I always say, like, you really don't need a planner. Planner is a luxury. Planner is completely optional. But you do need a wedding day coordinator to take it off your hands, and so you don't have to stress about it.
I think when people hear you don't need a wedding planner, they think that means all like wedding day assistance. But a coordinator is pretty essential. I mean, you can't, if maybe you have less than 20 people, or 30 people and you're doing a dinner party. But even when I host at my house, Greek Easter for my fiance's family, there's like 40 people coming, and I am zonked. There's no enjoyment of it. I'm like designing tabletops, and I'm cooking, and I'm doing florals. 100%. And I'm like, why do I do this for myself? Like, 100%. I don't get to ever enjoy the party because I'm like too busy hosting or not even, I can't even host because I'm too busy cooking and setting things up and breaking things down. So I've recently shifted to like, what can I do to outsource as much of it so I can actually enjoy the time now that I have a baby? I'm like, I want to like hang out with her, right?
Yes.
And experience the holiday with her versus like being in the kitchen
and being more as of a guest at your own events,
which is basically what a wedding is. You want to be like the guest of honor.
Well, I was going to ask you, what are your thoughts on like this whole idea of like wedding guest experiences? Like, there's a lot of talk on the internet of, is the wedding about all about the bride and the groom or the couple, or is it about the guests? And I have an interesting take, but I'm curious to hear yours.
I mean, I think it's a mixed thing. If you're asking people to fly across the country, go somewhere special, and you're hosting an event, I think, yes, it's about, your moment and celebrating with your partner. But I also think you want to make that experience memorable for the people that you love that are celebrating with you. So to me, I think of them as like going hand in hand. What are things that I love, right? So for us with our engagement party, it's like food is like really important. Our cultures are really important. So we had like Lebanese and Greek traditions in the food. That was like where we splurged a lot. Yeah. I wanted it to be like a night that people remembered. So we really like went all out with like decor and design. Like we had was at my parents' house, and we like covered the pool with like basically a clear stage. So like you could dance on, and there was like lighting up. So it was very like visually like, like something memorable.
Yeah.
And we had like fun music and dancing because I wanted people to have a really good time.
Totally.
So, we didn't do like a bunch of like activations. I guess we had a cigar roller. So that was one thing.
That. I'm having that at my wedding.
Okay, yeah. We had a cigar roller. We had a hookah station.
So fun.
Which was like fun. And because it was actually like right it wasn't during COVID, but it was a little bit afterwards. We got everyone individual hookahs, so they like could take them home as like party
So
favors.
fun. Okay, so that is extremely wedding guest centric.
Okay, so we had that, and then hookah, cigar station. Oh, and we had like a really crazy baklava setup.
Ugh,
which was like next level, and like a fruit and tea station.
I love that.
So food, I think, was really like a big part of it. We wanted people to, and then we had this is actually really fun. You know those 360 booths? Like they're kind of cheesy, but they're actually really good with like the money gun and like so we had that, and that was really fun too. So I think people had fun with it. Like it was like not like super formal, more about like kind of not taking ourselves too seriously, and like people, you know, putting on their sunglasses and whatever, and they had cute little photo moments to take with them. But yeah, nothing like really, I don't think over the top. We did have valet parking because I feel like that's annoying having to have parking situation, especially at a private residence. But those were like the guest moments, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's totally a balance when you're asking people to come, even though it's very easy to say, oh, the wedding's all about me, like me. It is also about your guests who are sacrificing their time, energy, and money to attend your wedding. It should be an experience for them in some capacity. And that's going to be different for every single person. But ultimately, I lean making sure your guests are happy. And then the couple will be happy. You know?
For sure. And I mean, one part of that too is being able to like see your guests, talk to them. I mean, you're gonna be walking around that you're gonna be like waving like a pageant princess.
Yes.
To say hi to everyone with all those people there.
Yeah, my shoes, they better be comfortable. I'm literally bringing different levels of heel because by the end of the night I'm gonna be in flats because
have you started breaking in your heels yet?
No.
Oh, you have to do that.
I know I have
to. I mean, you have time.
I have time.
But
I haven't.
I would not recommend first time wearing shoes.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. But yeah, I will be scanning the room for sure. And I'm going to try to get a lot of our hellos out in cocktail hour so that way if you guys want to see me and talk to me and Steven are going to be on the dance floor and we're going to be dancing, and so that's going to be the best way to find us because we want our guests to be on their feet.
So you're going to be at your cocktail hour. When are you doing your photos?
So we are doing a first look, which I am team first look. I love the idea of, you know, walking down the aisle and that's the first moment, but also knowing myself and Steven, we don't like do well in those environments. Like we don't do well with surprises. Clearly, I knew that I was getting engaged at some point and I planned the venue in advance, but I just feel like we would be like, I don't know how our reactions would be. And I feel like we wanted to have our own intimate moment without people watching us, especially because it is hundreds of people. So we are doing the first look and we are going to be doing all of our pictures, all of our family pictures, even our friends' pictures before the actual ceremony starts. Like a few of our friends will be coming earlier so we can get the pictures. And then we can go straight into our cocktail hour and try to see as many people as possible.
That makes sense. Are you keeping your wedding dress a secret from him, or is he seeing it? Like,
oh no, the first dress is a secret. So I'm
how many dresses are we having here?
I'm having 2 wedding dresses. Okay. A lot of times people change into a shorter dress, like a mini dress for the reception. Not me. I'm having 2 gowns, 2 full moments. The second one is definitely more party vibes, but the first dress is going to be a complete surprise for him. And then my second dress that I'll be changing into towards the end of cocktail hour before my reception entrance, he has seen. Okay. Because I'm like, that one's not going to be like this moment. It's literally going to probably be him zippering up my dress or buttoning my dress and then us going. So he really wanted to see it. And I was like, okay, you could see it. Like it's fine. But the first dress is a surprise.
Amazing. And did you plan that one in advance? I'm sure you did.
My dress?
Yes.
No, I actually had a really hard time dress shopping.
Okay. So walk us through it.
I feel like because I'm in the wedding industry, I have tried on so many dresses and I just didn't know what I wanted and what I was going for and what I thought I knew, but then when I tried them on, I didn't. And I don't know, it was just really hard. I think social media played a big part in making it hard because you see so many things online, but people also don't tell you how much those dresses cost, which is also a whole separate thing. But I really took my time with dress shopping. I didn't pick out my dress till I want to say end of October.
I mean, that's still, what is that, for 10 months in advance? That's pretty good.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, but I mean, considering I got engaged in March, I think a lot of people
And you had your venue already booked?
Right. I think a lot of people were like, oh, like, you know, need to get the dress right away. But like, my biggest advice is like, wait, not too late. Make sure you give yourself enough time for the dress to come in and alterations, which I haven't even scheduled alterations yet. That I am probably behind in. But your mind's going to change so much. Like, even from when I got engaged to now, my vision for the wedding, my vision for my outfits is totally different. I feel like if I would have made the jump right away based on like adrenaline and lust and impulse, because you're so high from being like engaged and happy, I would have had a lot of regrets and probably wasted a lot of money because I would just have had to redo things.
I actually know of multiple brides that have bought a dress and then changed their mind.
I believe it.
Like 4 months later, and then get a completely different dress, and they either have to sell that dress or figure out a way to like recoup some of the cost because they just their taste changed, their mind changed, or they had the wrong people in the room when they were trying on the dress and kind of like wanted to people please more than anything. Like when I was trying on dresses for my engagement party, I actually went solo. And then once I like curated it down, I had a friend of mine like who was around the corner. I'm like, okay, come and like just like validate that what I'm thinking. Yeah. Just because like I didn't really want the opinions of others. Did you bring family with you?
So yeah, I completely agree with not wanting or protecting your peace. I think that's what it is, because whether that's too strong of an opinion either way, I think could be overwhelming. Like there's nothing worse than a bridal stylist or somebody who's watching you try on dresses being like, that's the one, you have to say yes, I love that.
When they say that's the one, that always like I've heard it and I've seen it. It's so much pressure. It's a weird thing to say.
Yes, it's so much pressure. Or like, are you going to say yes? Like, and it's like, whoa. I actually went wedding dress shopping with my mom and my two grandmothers. So my Grammy and my grandma on both sides. And then when I picked up my wedding dress, my mother-in-law came. So yeah, I didn't even have friends. I just had either my mom or my grandparents.
And
there.
Were they like supportive? What was their, they were very relaxed?
They were very relaxed. I think they were like, I'm the only girl and it's just me and my brother and we don't have any first cousins. So it's really just, I guess I'm the baby. And so
they were just, the princess?
And I'm the princess, and they were just taking the moment in. They were just like, honestly, pretty peaceful and like quiet. And they gave their opinions when I asked for it. And they were honest, but they weren't too forceful either way. But when I tried on the dresses that I knew were going to be the one, it was like a no-brainer.
So you like knew right away?
I knew, but I didn't say yes right away. I like, in my head, I was like, okay, this is, I think, the one. And then I slept on it, waited a couple days, honestly, probably even 2 weeks for both dresses, just to like make sure I was really sure. Because like I said, in that moment, though it's fun to like have that moment right then and there, I feel like a lot of times brides need to just like take a minute to themselves and really just like let the moment sink in.
Yeah.
And then I just made a couple custom changes to it when I went back and said yes. So
amazing. Did you get targeted on Instagram or TikTok with your wedding dress after you chose it?
What do you mean?
Okay. You haven't heard of this phenomenon?
No.
So a lot of brides, once they find their dress, I don't know how the phone does it. It like knows. And then it starts to just show you other brides wearing your dress.
Yes.
And I've heard, actually, there was a bride I was speaking to who was like narrowed in on this gown that she wanted, didn't pull the trigger, was waiting like 2 weeks or whatever. And in that period, like the Instagram algorithm or the TikTok algorithm like figured out that was the dress. And she kept getting served like organic content of different brides wearing the dress. And it made her like not want the dress anymore.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, then that was a good scenario of that happening. I can imagine that being not a good situation if you've already saw your dress. I will say, because of me being in the wedding world for so many years, I've been to so many bridal fashion weeks where I have seen so many wedding dresses. And I think at that point, once you kind of decide, you kind of have to like not watch. Like you have to have some self-control.
Stop looking at dresses.
Exactly. It's no different than when you decide anything in your wedding. Once you pick your themes, once you pick your like stick to it or delay your choice as much as possible. But once you do decide, you need to be decisive, because there will always be something else. There will always be more. There will be always different ways of going about it. But you have to trust yourself and make the decision that's best for you and tune out all the noise.
Are you sharing your dress designer? I mean, I know who it is.
Not yet.
Okay. So
soon.
We're going to be I think we're going to be co-sharing it.
Yes.
Your wedding photos.
Yes.
Your
Stay tuned.
Photos. Okay.
It'll be I'm so excited for them to be out in the world.
What have you not enjoyed planning, or what has been the worst part of this entire experience? And maybe it's different for you, but like, what do you also hear from brides or couples planning is like their worst part?
Yeah. I'll start with other brides. I think one thing that I hear a lot is not having support from their family or friends. And I think that can really make an impact on your experience as a bride, especially if you have people really giving their opinion or just not supporting you and your relationship or what you're choosing to do with the wedding, whether or not you choose to have a destination wedding and family or friends have an opinion about that, or you choose to go a smaller guest list and people have an opinion about that. And I think that can really take a toll on a lot of brides, especially if you're more of a people pleaser and wanting to make everyone happy, because with a wedding, you really can't. There's always going to be something that somebody's going to have to say about it, but when you don't have the support, it really makes a difference. For me, I will say I'm very grateful. I have had the most support ever, and I'm so grateful and blessed, and I can't say that enough. The hardest thing I will say has to be the social media pressure of delivering this epic wedding. You know, I've talked about weddings for so many years, and I think there is this push to reinvent the wheel, and I am such a classic vision, dream kind of girl where I've always wanted the Cinderella wedding. I've always wanted the black and white, crisp, clean, classic wedding. And a lot of times with social media, I feel like I've like tried to like convince myself to go another direction, or even with wedding dress shopping, like, oh, should I do this because this will, you know, this is most popular right now, or like this is what's trending. And I think the pressure from making sure it looks good has been hard, but I will say I've been like really good about bringing myself back down and honestly advocating for brides who feel the same, of like, this wedding is not for anybody. Like, it's for your guests, yes, but at the end of the day, like, who cares about, you know, what things look like from the third eye? Like, as long as you're happy with your decisions, like, that's the most important thing.
You are DIYing some elements of your wedding. I think I saw you did for your bachelorette party some custom embroidery.
Yes.
How crazy. I mean, and you said you bought a machine.
I bought a machine.
Okay. So tell me.
I am in my new hobby era. I finally have a hobby. I feel like for the longest time I was like, I need a hobby. Embroidery. I love that machine. And yeah, for my bachelorette, which is in just a couple weeks, I am embroidering towels, sweatshirts, napkins. Same with my bridal shower. I'm embroidering napkins. I think I'm going to do a lot of cocktail napkins for the wedding. I'm just going in on the embroidery. And I think that's also really popular right now. People love customization because I feel like it's a small detail that people really remember, or they are like, wow, like they really thought of everything. And so with the bachelorette, especially because it's fun, I'm leaning into that and just gifting my girls a lot of fun things.
Is there anything that is going to be a total surprise to your partner
on the wedding day?
Yeah.
No. Honestly,
he's been a part of the conversation, the decisions.
He is the big picture kind of guy. Once I've worked through all the details and I've, you know, decided something, or in between a few, he comes in, gives his opinion. He's very decisive. He knows what he likes. He knows what he doesn't. And he's been very involved in like the decision making. But I will say from like the detail standpoint of like, how did we get to like these options of like the hours and hours of research, or like the vendors, that's definitely me. But he knows everything that we're doing. And every week we have like a sit down date night where we bring up the Excel spreadsheet and we go through everything, what's outstanding, and he actually loves it, even though you wouldn't think, but he enjoys being a part of it.
So you cover a lot of topics on your channels about like how to save money or different kind of trends that are happening in weddings. Like, what are things that you think most brides don't think of that should know when they're planning?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you don't have to get married on a Saturday night. Though it's probably the most favorited day, it also is the most expensive day to get married in. And so I would just recommend thinking about all of your options, thinking about every day of the week. Thursday weddings are super popular, but so are Friday weddings, and those are more affordable than a Saturday wedding. I also will say, play around with the season. Though you might have a vision and you want a summer wedding or a spring wedding or a fall wedding, winter is definitely a room for negotiation for a lot of vendors because it is more of a slower season. And so depending on what your vibe and aesthetic is, play around with different dates on the calendar. And then that way you can kind of see where you want to splurge on.
I've actually heard from wedding vendors that the typical wedding season, which used to be kind of that like May to October period, has been spreading.
I believe it.
So many people are opting to have weddings in January, 100%. In December, and they're down for a winter wedding, or destination weddings have become so popular that a lot of vendors are now, busy in the quote unquote off season.
Yes.
Just because of, couples looking for ways to either save money, or if you're in that time and season of kind of wedding for your friends.
Yeah.
I had a friend who went to 18 or was invited to 18 weddings in one summer. Like, that's a lot, right? So I've seen couples be like, let's space it out. Let's do something like in November and have it be a destination. So it gives people a break from,
I want to get your thoughts, though. What are your thoughts on negotiating with vendors? Because I feel like that
this
can
is
be
like the thing that I actually saw. I saw an Instagram post that got taken down.
Oh my gosh.
That a publication put up that it was a post on how to negotiate with your vendors.
Okay.
And
why did it get taken down?
Because a lot of the vendor community were really upset because they advertise on that account.
Interesting.
And they were like, well, maybe we should negotiate fees with you. Look, I think wedding professionals, it is a business. It is a service they provide. I think there are professionals at every service level. Yes. So if your budget for flowers is $5,000, don't go to the vendor that their minimum is $25,000 and ask them to meet you where they are. That is just ridiculous and unattainable, and honestly a waste of a vendor's time and not very respectful. That being said, on the other side, I think vendors, I would recommend that they put some level of starting price point on their website to save them the time of back and forth inquiries, because sometimes you have no idea like what the starting price point is for a vendor. Yeah, you have no idea. So if it's packages starting at, right, that lets people know like that's your floor of what you'll do to take on a wedding or an event, right? So if a vendor has that and then you have that information, like I don't think you ever want to negotiate on that. That being said, if you have a vision of what you want and they present a proposal, you really like them and their aesthetic and their style, you can always go back to that vendor and say, this is what I want, right? Or I really like what can you do for me in my budget? Because they might be able to pull back hours. If it's a florist, they might be able to pull back arrangements or use flowers that are maybe not as expensive. Like there's different ways, and vendors are professionals. They know how to work within a sliding budget scale. But it's not about negotiating down to get more value out of the vendor. I feel like that is like a really icky, yucky thing. But I do think being transparent about your budget and what you want, right? And then asking them professionally, like, what do you think we could do? Is there anything we can do to
less hours?
Yes.
Like less,
is there something we can do here? And the answer might be no, and that's totally fine. And okay, thanks. I tried. But I think the idea of negotiating kind of feels like you're trying to squeeze people for like, to get every last dollar out of it. And like, this is a service they're providing, right? You wouldn't want to negotiate with a restaurant on their prices on the menu. It's like, no, there's a reason why it's priced that way based on the location, the staff cost, the cost of food. So I don't like the idea of negotiating, but I do think having an honest conversation about your budget is really important.
Yeah. I also think, to play devil's advocate, I think a lot of couples need to do their research on their vendors, because if you are only going to the ones that you see that are viral on social media that have a lot of followers, odds are a lot of times I've at least been seeing as a bride, because I kind of have both sides from like I see the vendor's eyes, but I also have been in it from a bride perspective. just because those pictures or videos or flowers, whatever it is, goes viral on social media does not necessarily mean that their experience or their price point is where it should be. Mm-hmm. A lot of times you find people go viral, they have a lot of inquiries, they raise their prices. Classic supply and demand, it's a business like you said. But couples need to start looking across the board because there really is so many amazing vendors that don't have the biggest platforms on social media that could be in their range and provide fabulous work.
I actually find that some of the best vendors that do amazing work are like the worst at updating their social because they're so busy
they're working.
Producing weddings and events. And I think it's amazing when you're able to carve out resources to help build that social. And it's helpful, right? It gives inspiration. But I do think what you're saying is correct in that just because of a wedding goes viral, whether it's a photo or a video, right, of certain design elements, etc., like sometimes they're styled shoots. They're not even like real weddings. So that's like also something to consider too. Because I think some of the best vendors, like they're under the radar. They're low key. They're not spending hours on social media. Like it's hard, social media is your full-time job. Yes. Like it is a full-time job.
100%.
And to be putting out that type of content and really talented, bakers and photographers, and sometimes photographers even are not putting out like content, right? And they know how to create beautiful imagery.
Exactly.
So
and it is important. I think it's amazing what vendors and wedding industry professionals are doing to build their social media. I just really want couples to not only focus on that.
Well, if you're chasing a vendor because of their Instagram following, that's maybe the wrong reason to hire someone.
Exactly. But social media gets in people's head.
It does.
It makes them think that that's the norm when it doesn't have to be.
This has been the Loverly Wedding Podcast. We are hosted by Kelly Khalil, produced by Natasha Barkman, Kayla Fitzgerald, and Jennifer Alvarado. Watch the podcast on YouTube by subscribing to our channel, and you can follow and listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and every major RSS feed.